Thank you again for all coming out for our annual Local Roads Matter rally. Again this year, unfortunately, due to planning and the late changes in building restrictions, the local highway superintendents en masse are not here for a conference this year, so they're not joining us in the orange T-shirts, which is certainly a letdown for me, because that's always a great addition to our rally here. We do have some great representatives to speak on behalf of our local roads highway associations, and I want to start out in saying that the budget proposal so far that Governor Hochul has given us is certainly an improvement on prior years where we stood at this point in the budget process, and I want to thank her for that attention to that. We still don't think it goes far enough. And you'll hear more detail from others on where we're lacking, how much we're lacking, the billions of dollars we're lacking in infrastructure capital needs in New York State. One new area that the governor added this year is the pothole fund. We still don't have an explanation on how that's going to be distributed. And we are advocating here today that that be distributed following the CHIPS formula. I believe that the CHIPS program and that formula is probably the fairest program as far as distribution of funds that we have in New York State. It goes on a mile-per-mile basis, so no matter how many miles your municipality has, so you have more or less than the other, you get an amount based on the miles you have. So it goes directly dollar per mile on that goes out. So we're hopeful that that pothole money follows that as well. It's a nice increase in the CHIPS funding. We would prefer to have some of these other programs rolled into the base CHIPS funding so that it was a more set figure from year to year and not a bunch of different programs that the governor or the legislature could choose to fund or not fund or reduce or what have you. But with that, I thank you again for all being here, and I will kick it over to our leader in the Republican Senate Conference, Leader Rob Orton.
Thank you, Tom. I want to thank Senator O'Mara and Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. They have led and put this press conference together year after year, certainly as long as I've been in the legislature, and they continue to advocate and support local infrastructure and local road needs, and I want to thank them for their effort to put this together. Usually, as Senator O'Mara mentioned, it's a much larger affair. There's a lot of burly young men and women around us in orange shirts screaming about local roads. Today, they couldn't be here because we didn't know that we'd even be able to do this today. So they're out working for all of us, paving the streets, paving the roads, getting ready for spring, getting ready for paving. They don't know what they're going to have officially yet, but they have to prepare. I was a former mayor, like a lot of my colleagues who are behind me, served in local government, and I know the importance of CHIPS money. I know the importance of the culvert program, the Bridge New York program. That makes a huge difference. In many cases, especially for small rural communities, that is the only money that they have to repair roads and infrastructure. Consider, from the New York Trip Report recently, I read that there was half of all New York roads are either deficient or in significant need of repair. Half. $28 billion. That is the amount of money that New Yorkers spend every year on vehicle maintenance as a result of the conditions of many of our local roads. Again, according to the New York Trip Report. So when we talk about money and the need for money, $28 billion is being spent by New Yorkers already because of a lack of local road being maintained, a lack of money going out to our local communities to help them support and rebuild critical infrastructure. We talk about the economy coming back after COVID. We talk about economic development. We've all supported big projects and big dollars going to various communities. I got news for you. If you don't have good infrastructure and good roads, the last thing you want is more traffic. And the last thing is people are going to want to do is drive on those poor roads. So we need to be supporting these communities. We need to be supporting our local communities. We have billions of dollars. And over the next month, all we're going to hear about is where that money is going to be spent. Most of that revenue, if not the vast majority of it, is one-time revenue. We will not have this in recurring years. The best use of one-time revenues, and my supervisors and mayors who are behind me know this for sure, is on capital infrastructure, capital needs. Fix projects, fix roads that you otherwise maybe couldn't fix in a tough budget year. We have the money to make a real impact and to really show that local roads do indeed matter to the New York State Legislature. We have that opportunity this year like we have not had in years past. And so the governor has certainly done a good job or a better job in her budget proposal, but it's on her and it's on our colleagues in the legislature who aren't standing here today. It's on our colleagues to make sure that not only does that money maintain, but we build upon that. Let's use this one-time revenue to really make a positive impact in our local communities, in our local infrastructure. New Yorkers will be the better for it. And at this time, I want to call up my counterpart in the New York State Assembly, someone who has supported this initiative for many, many years, Leader Will Barkley.
Well, thank you, Leader Ort, and thanks for partnering with our conference on this issue and so many issues that you and your conference have partnered with us on. Like Leader Ort, I want to thank Senator O'Mara and Assemblyman Palmesano for their leadership in getting CHIP funding over the years. And if those two don't demonstrate how to get things done in Albany, I don't know two legislators that show it better. I mean, it doesn't make a difference what side of the aisle you're on. When you have the energy, the work ethic, and the passion that Tom O'Mara and Phil Palmesano have, they show you can get it done. And everybody that's concerned about infrastructure in New York should be thankful for their efforts. The one people I want to also thank are the highway crews out there. You know, they're the people that allow us to get to place every day. And there's no snow days for the highway crews. They work in that ridiculously hot weather. They can work in that really, really cold weather, but they're out there. They're out there every day for us. So I want to say thank you to the highway crews and the superintendents that do a great job for us in New York State. And they deserve a round of applause. In 2018, the Assembly Republican Conference held hearings throughout the state on New York's infrastructure. And one thing we learned, and Leader Ort mentioned this, that the infrastructure that we have in New York State is way past its age. And as a result, we have to do more maintenance. Leader Ort mentioned how much it costs in damage to cars, et cetera. And we have a $10 billion surplus in our budget this year. It seems to me this is the most appropriate thing to send money repairing our roads and bridges. So I look forward to working with all our colleagues here. We're happy again that the governor has recognized that infrastructure is important, but of course we can do a lot more. So thank you very much and look forward to supporting these worthy initiatives during this budget process. So now I'd like to introduce Phil Palmesano.
Good morning. Welcome to our 10th annual Local Roads Matter, Local Roads Are Essential press conference. As everyone said, usually we are joined by hundreds of highway superintendents around the state. They're not here in person, but they're here with us in spirits. But we do have several stakeholders who will be speaking about the importance of local roads in our infrastructure. I certainly want to thank Leader Ort and Leader Barkley for being here today with all of our Senate and Assembly colleagues in support of this effort. And certainly want to send a big shout out to all our highway superintendents around the state for the great work you do every day for us. So we're again here to renew our effort to strengthen our commitment to partnering with our local municipalities and investing in our local roads, bridges, and culverts. The fact of the matter is 87% of the roads in New York State are owned and maintained by our local municipalities. 52% of the bridges are owned and maintained by our municipalities. And 48% of the miles driven are driven on our local roads. The ask that we sent in a letter to the governor and legislative leaders is warranted, justified, and attainable. Our specific ask for this budget is to increase the CHIP space aid by $250 million. Increase the Extreme Winter Recovery Fund by $50 million to $150 million. Also, the governor had put forth a new pothole program. We are asking for that $100 million to be distributed through the existing CHIPS Extreme Winter Recovery Program funding because it's fair, ensures equity and fairness. All communities have potholes. All deserve part of this funding. And also, we're asking for a robust 5-year capital plan. The governor put out a 5-year, $32.8 billion plan. We're asking for a 5-year, $44 billion plan. And we believe, again, investment is warranted and justified. The fact of the matter is we have billions of dollars in unmet needs on our local infrastructure. Couple that with the unprecedented decline we've seen in our local infrastructure and state highway system. Not to mention the rising inflationary costs that are hitting our local towns and municipalities with fuel and other costs. And we will get into some of those numbers a little later. We have a historic opportunity this year to make this incredible investment to improve our local infrastructure and address these billions of dollars in unmet needs and deteriorating conditions, to make our roads and bridges safer for those who travel and for economic development. We have a 5-year, this is attainable, we have a 5-year projected budget surplus of $24 billion, $11 billion when you combine this year and next year's budget, right, these 2 years. But on top of that, we are going to be receiving an inflow of $13.4 billion in federal infrastructure dollars, a 52% increase. Now is the time, now is the opportunity to strengthen our commitment and partnership with our local municipalities and taxpayers to make these critical investments and to show that our local roads, bridges, and culverts do matter, that our local roads, bridges, and culverts are essential. So at this point in time, we'll come back a little bit later to wrap up on some of the other statistics, but I want to introduce some of our speakers who will come here today to share some of their thoughts. So first, I'd like to introduce Andy Avery. He's the president of the New York State County Highway Association. Andy.
Good morning. This year's executive budget includes an extraordinary investment in our transportation infrastructure. The state legislators here with us today recognize the critical need we have to invest and increase our public investment into local transportation. They helped to enact a record $1 billion in local roads and bridges last year. We're gathered here today to urge our local officials and our elected officials to continue this commitment by hitting these CHIPS and other local transportation funding targets. Improving our aging roads and bridges isn't just a safe investment, it's a smart one. Why? Safety. Highway professionals recognize the importance of a well-maintained, well-functioning transportation system and its contribution to our safety. Improving the local road and bridge conditions correlates to a measurable correlation and reduction in the number and rate of accidents. Employment. This is a pretty good statistic. Each $150 million increase in funding for local roads, bridges, and culverts creates up to 4,200 jobs, construction-related jobs each year. Resiliency in the environment. Public investment helps us to mend our roads, our existing aging and ailing transportation systems. Public investment allows us to incorporate good environmental policy when repairing our infrastructure. Public investment helps fund new approaches, materials, and technologies to harden our infrastructure to last longer and stand up better to natural disasters. Public investment helps us respond to the high and rapidly escalating costs of our materials, labor, fuel, and asphalt. This essential funding we are asking for will help keep millions of motorists safe and create tens of thousands of jobs at a critical time for promoting our economic recovery. So I want to just thank Senator O'Meara, Assemblyman Palmesano, and leaders Barclay and Ort for inviting me here today just to deliver our message that we really need this investment in our local roads and communities. Eventually, all roads lead local. Every hospital that's built, every development depends on a local road system. Interstate systems are great. Really, they fuel the economic development, but without the local system there to accept those cars and vehicles and trucks, we just don't get the impact that we would otherwise have. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce Matt Mustico. He's the third vice president of the New York State Association of Town Highway Superintendents Highway, also the Town of Elmira Highway Superintendent from Chemung County. Thank you, Matt.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Mustico. I'm the Highway Superintendent, Town of Elmira in Chemung County, and I'm also the third vice president of the New York State Highway Superintendents Association. I'm representing 933 towns in the state of New York. On behalf of the entire membership, I would like to thank Senator O'Mara and Assemblyman Palmesano for inviting us up to represent us here today. Despite the best efforts of New York State highway superintendents who know firsthand about the deteriorating conditions of the roads and bridges, we're also thank you for the executive budgets for the last year's record levels proposed in the increase of bridge New York, as well as create new operations and Pave New York and pothole program. Our association supports increasing funding in CHIPS program by an additional $250 million above the proposed executive budget, and increasing extreme winter recovery program by $50 million. And I don't know if anybody knows it. Last year we were paying about $63 in place for blacktop. The price of oil, I hear, is going to be like $100 a ton in place. So we really do need the extra funds this year. And the cost of fuel in our budgets, we didn't anticipating it rising over double what we paid last year. So it's going to take effect. So we do desperately need this extra CHIPS funding that our town, and I also run a village, we rely on the CHIPS funding tremendously upon our budget, above our budget, to maintain our roads. We can't really do anything above and beyond. We're just basically maintaining what we have right now. So the extra money we got last year was really great, but this year we really could use some more, like I say, to offset the fuel costs and the prices of the asphalt, and everything else is going up, steel and everything. So I'd like to just thank you guys for inviting us up. Like I say, I've been here for every rally we've had in the past 10 years, except for we missed last year. And this year, been well missed by everybody in our association, and I think it's really helped out showing all the orange shirts. We don't have any this year, but we'll make up for it some year. So thank you for the invite.
Mark Levine, Deputy Director for the New York State Association of Counties. Mark? Oh, there you go. Sorry. Sorry. Sorry about that. I'll get in front here.
Thank you, Assemblymember Palmesano and Senator O'Mara and all the members of the state legislature. NYSAC and our member counties appreciate your efforts on this issue and many others. And we appreciate the ongoing and hard work of our highway superintendents and road crews across the state of New York. Our local government roads are in a constant state of disrepair. Additional state revenues will go a long way to help improve the conditions of our roads and bridges, and we are grateful for your efforts.
Thank you, Mark. Next, I'd like to introduce Walter Polcholzak, Vice President of Government Affairs from the Associated General Contractors of New York State. Thank you, Walter, for being here.
Thank you, Assemblyman. It's great to be here again. 10 years, wow, it's a long time, and we've had a lot of success. I want to thank both of you for hosting these on an annual basis. Governor Hochul has stepped up to the plate with record funding for local roads and bridges. It's a welcome sign that she's committed to fixing our deteriorating roads and bridges. Senator Schumer and the New York congressional delegation secured historic federal funding that presents the legislature with an opportunity to leverage New York's multi-billion-dollar budget surplus. Now is the right time to keep New Yorkers safe on New York's roads and bridges. That includes investing in a robust 5-year capital program. Again, thank you, Assemblyman Palmesano, Senator O'Mara, and all the members that are here today. It's great to be back at the Capitol. And again, thanks so much, everybody.
Next, I'd like to welcome Chris Ketzley, Supervisor from the town of Glenville in Schenectady County. Chris.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning. As the Assemblyman said, I'm Chris Ketzley. I'm the town supervisor, town of Glenville in Schenectady County, home to Senator Tedisco. Good to see you, Senator.
Oh, good.
I want to thank you for all you do for our town. But I want to thank the Senate and the Assembly, both the Senator, the Assemblyman, and your colleagues for putting this issue forward. There are few issues that are more important to local governments than good roads, I can tell you that. In fact, on my way here, I received 2 emails asking about our paving plan for 2022, and so our residents are already asking about it. As you know, reliable roads drive New York's economy and keep people safe. We appreciate Governor Hochul for her first executive budget proposing a new 5-year DOT capital plan, which represents the state's commitment to supporting a strong transportation system. We also appreciate Governor Hochul in proposing to maintain funding for local highway programs at the levels increased in last year's state budget, and the creation of the new program, Pave Our Potholes. Every dollar not funded through CHIPS must be raised locally, but we are limited. We're limited by many things. It was already talked about today, inflation and what's going on with aggregate and fuel costs, but we're limited by the tax cap. While the tax cap attempts to control property taxes statewide, it has not done anything to slow the growth of local government expenses or the need to provide safe and reliable transportation system. With the adoption of the new federal infrastructure bill, New York has more resources to provide the funding needed to not only maintain our local roads and bridges, but to improve them. That's why we're asking the state to increase funding for the CHIPS program, which many towns rely on to support New York's local transportation network. Increasing the CHIPS program will also help towns engage in long-term capital planning. It will grow our economy, and it will lower our property taxes. I just want to put in perspective real quick what this means to a local government. My town of 30,000 people have 100 miles of road, and we used to be able to maintain a capital plan of 10 years. Every year we're able to pave 10 miles of road. So by the time 10 years came around, we got back to the beginning of it, and it helped us maintain our roads. But with CHIPS fundamentally being held where it has been for the past 13 years and the cost of everything going up, we now can only maintain 5 miles a year with our CHIPS money. That means now we're on a 20-year plan, which means local roads are going too long in disrepair, and residents are paying the price for it. I have to, every year now, allocate another $150,000 to $200,000 out of our capital reserves just to try to keep pace with our town's roads. I want to thank again the Senate, the Assembly, the Governor, everyone for taking this issue up. This is an important issue. There are few issues more important to local government than this, and I thank you all for being here today. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Renee St. Jacques from the Associate Director of Public Policy for the New York Farm Bureau. Renee.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation today to show support and voice support from New York Farm Bureau, the largest agricultural advocacy organization in the state. We represent farmers from across the state. That includes dairy farmers, raising livestock, fruit and vegetable, and then also our maple, which is going on right now. And certainly they're using the roads to transport sap to their sugar houses. So farmers really rely on their local roads. And it's not only to transport farm products to schools, restaurants, for processing, to their farmers markets, but it's also from farm to field. And as the spring season comes upon us, it's so important that we have these local roads that are well taken care of, and also our bridges. So as we see in the pandemic has showed us how important our food supply chain is, and local road infrastructure is a big part of that. And New York Farm Bureau certainly supports the increased investment in the budget lines, also including chips, very important, so that we can make sure that we're getting more New York farm products to our communities across the state. So thank you so much for the invitation today, and certainly the support of the local roads.
I'm not sure if Mark Herbst made it up. He was traveling. I don't know if he was stuck in traffic, so I don't see him. So just want to thank you all again. I just want to go through some numbers for you, just to kind of show why this infrastructure investment is needed. We already talked about the fact that 87% of the roads are owned and maintained by our municipality, and 52% of the 18,000 bridges as well. Listen, a lot of times when we talk about infrastructure, a lot of attention is paid to the MTA, many signature projects. Now, we understand that the MTA is the lifeblood of the downstate transportation network, but CHIPS, I will remind you, is the lifeblood of our upstate transportation network. Sometimes many local communities, poorer communities, that's all they have to do to fix their local infrastructure. The needs and conditions are certainly well documented. The comptroller had estimated in a previous report that we have $89 billion in unmet needs on our local infrastructure system over the next 2 decades. Another report that he put forth in 2017 said that we have $27 billion in repairs needed on our locally owned bridges. Another report talked about from the comptroller that we have 32% of our local bridges are deficient, and more than 40% of our local, or 32% of our bridges, excuse me, and more than 40% of our local roads are fair or poor, or getting worse. An analysis that was done by the New York State Association of Town Highway Superintendents previously showed that outside of New York, they face a funding gap of $1.7 billion annually. And of course, Leader Orr mentioned the TRIP study, a transportation advocacy group that said that New York motorists pay $28 billion in additional costs, sometimes up to $32 per driver, depending on your area. From an economic perspective, the supervisor mentioned, for every dollar invested in CHIPS is one less local dollar that comes from the local property taxpayer. Our local property taxpayers deserve to have some of their state dollars come back to their local communities to fix their local infrastructure. Every dollar invested in CHIPS saves $6 to $14 in long-term rehabilitation costs. It was already mentioned, too, that every $150 million in funding that's invested in local roads, bridges, and culverts can create up to 4,200 highway construction-related jobs. The fact of the matter is, from a safety perspective, we need to be proactive, not reactive. We all saw the Pittsburgh Bridge collapse last month. Now think about it from this perspective. How many of us put our kids on a school bus every morning that travel over a local road or bridge? God forbid we have a tragedy. We need to be proactive, not reactive. Our first responders that go over local roads and bridges trying to get to an emergency, if one of those are out, a delay, that can cause a tragedy. We need to be proactive, not reactive. And we call on Governor Hochul to be proactive and not reactive. We have a historic opportunity with this budget, with the budget surplus that we have, the historic federal infrastructure dollars that are coming in, to join us, do the right thing, make this increased commitment of critical investment into our CHIPS program and our local roads, bridges, and culverts. And I want you all to remember that local roads don't just matter. Local roads are essential. To close, I just want to turn it over to my friend and colleague who's been a partner in this endeavor for the 10 years, Senator Tom O'Mara, no stronger advocate on this issue and on many issues, to wrap up, and then we'll take your questions.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much, Phil, and for your work with me over the years. 10 years now with this. It's hard to believe. We have a governor now, truly from upstate New York, one who has shown some recognition of the needs of our local roads and bridges. We don't think it's enough. We're going to push, and we are pushing for more to do that, for the safety reasons, for the relief to local governments and providing this desperately needed capital improvements to our local roads. So, you know, it's just, it's great to see the people that came to speak with us today. No coincidence that Andy and Matt are both from my home county of Chemung County, so it's great to have them here with us. But the fact that they're leaders in highway associations and this work across the state is great to have these colleagues here with us today to help us with this. But for everyone that spoke today, thank you very much. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to try and answer them. Yep.
Leader Barkley, your conference has called for cuts in terms of inflation, gas tax, and I think in January you talked about that the governor has that money from the surplus to offset those costs, $2.6 billion. Do you see that you can have it both ways? You can have the gas tax cuts and you can add from that $10 billion surplus and you have enough money?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the cuts we're talking to with gas and other home products and some certain takeaway food products, I think over 2 years we're talking $2.5 billion. So that's over 2 years. This year alone we have a $10 billion surplus. I think there's an agreement on all conferences on that money. So clearly we have plenty of money to do it all.
I'm curious from a political standpoint to talk about the Secretary of Budget. We have the governor that promised to usher in or working together across the aisle. Have you seen that yet in the state of process that you probably have a question?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen enough yet, from my perspective, to be honest with you. It still seems to be just the majorities in the room, so to speak, on these important issues. And, you know, we represent millions and millions of New Yorkers. And this is just one small aspect we hear about today on the use of these dollars for our local communities that deserve them, our local communities that have both Republican and Democrats in them. We need fair funding. We need fair funding across the board in so many areas, and this is just the one we're highlighting here today. But I'd certainly like to see a more open door in regards to dialogue between all conferences of the state legislature.
Yeah, I think Tom hit it right. We're stand ready and willing to work with the majorities, work with the governor for any public policy that we think is good public policy for New York State. But I will come back to CHIPS and funding on infrastructure. I don't think it's a Republican or Democratic issue. I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think it's a good government issue. So hopefully they hear our message, and if they want to work with us, God bless them, we're ready to go with them.